The dress felt heavier than it should have as it rested against her ribs, as if it already knew how much she needed it to change something that had been broken for too long. Hannah stood in the narrow bathroom of her sister's apartment in Columbus, Ohio, staring at her reflection and wondering how many quiet prayers it took to feel worthy of being seen. Have you ever looked at yourself like that, hoping fabric could hide your fear, hoping one evening might rewrite years of disappointment? If this were you, would you still walk out the door knowing your heart had already learned how to brace for rejection? Hannah had not planned on borrowing the dress. It had belonged to her cousin Abigail, worn once to a wedding where happiness looked effortless on everyone else. Hannah's own life had been stitched together with late rent notices, a job at a dental office that barely covered groceries, and a series of almosts that never became enough. The blind date came from a church friend who insisted she deserved kindness after everything she had endured, especially after her last relationship ended with silence and unanswered messages. Hannah told herself it was only dinner, but the truth pressed harder. She was tired of feeling invisible, tired of being the woman people forgot to choose. So she slipped into the borrowed blue fabric, smoothing it down like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. Outside, the city lights hummed with a confidence she didn't recognize in herself. She walked to the cafe slowly, every step filled with the echo of old doubts. What if he laughed inwardly at her thrift store shoes? What if he saw through the borrowed elegance and found the woman who counted coins before buying coffee? She had learned how quickly kindness could vanish once reality appeared. Somewhere deep inside, she questioned whether God noticed the small humiliations she carried or the way loneliness settled in at night like a second skin. Matthew arrived before she did, standing near the entrance with an unassuming stillness that didn't demand attention. He wasn't flashy or loud, just present like someone who knew how to listen. When Hannah reached the door, her nerves twisted so tight she nearly turned back. But she didn't, because something about his calm made leaving feel harder than staying. As they sat together, Hannah waited for the moment she would feel measured and found lacking. Instead, time softened. The evening unfolded without sharp edges, without the exhausting performance she had mastered over years of first impressions. Matthew spoke about growing up in rural Kentucky, about faith learned through service rather than words, about losing his mother young and learning how absence could shape compassion. Hannah listened, her defenses slowly lowering, her breath finally finding a steady rhythm. At one point, she confessed in a roundabout way that she didn't usually dress like this, that the dress wasn't really hers, that she almost didn't come. She expected polite dismissal, the subtle shift that said interest was fading. What she received instead was something quieter and more dangerous to her guarded heart. Matthew looked at her not like a project or a passing curiosity, but like a person whose value was already decided. He gently made it clear, without fanfare or judgment, that the effort she made was seen but unnecessary, that her presence mattered more than the clothes she wore. That light didn't come from fabric or price tags. The words landed softly, yet they cracked something open inside her that had been sealed by years of comparison and self-blame. Driving home later, Hannah cried at every red light. Not because she was hurt, but because she wasn't. Have you ever experienced kindness so unexpected it makes you mourn all the times you believed you were unworthy of it? She realized how much of her life had been spent trying to earn love by shrinking herself, by apologizing for needing anything at all. That night she folded the dress carefully and placed it back in the borrowed bag, aware that it no longer held the power she thought it did. The days that followed didn't magically fix her life. Bills still waited. The job was still exhausting. But something inside Hannah had shifted. She found herself standing straighter at work, speaking with more certainty, volunteering again at church like she once had before disappointment taught her to withdraw. Matthew didn't rush anything. Their connection grew slowly, grounded in shared meals, honest conversations, and a mutual understanding that healing was not linear. He never tried to rescue her, and she never pretended to be someone else. Together, they honored the quiet truth that love built on patience lasts longer than love built on illusion. Months later, Hannah donated the dress to a local shelter. She watched another woman pick it up with hesitant hands, eyes shining with the same fragile hope she once carried. Hannah whispered a prayer for her, not for the dress to change her life, but for someone to remind her that she was already enough. Standing there, Hannah understood that the blind date had not been about romance alone. It had been about learning how to see herself through kinder eyes, about recognizing that God's grace often arrives through ordinary people who say ordinary things at exactly the right moment. If you've ever felt like you needed to become someone else to be loved, pause here and tell us in the comments what part of this story felt closest to your own heart. Hannah never forgot that night, not because it marked the beginning of a relationship, but because it marked the end of believing she had to borrow worth from anyone else. And if this story stirred something in you, if it made you reflect on kindness, regret, hope, or second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, but only if it truly touched your heart.